Welcome everybody to Go Local Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder of GoLocal. Excited to have on today Luke O'Neill, writer, provocateur, a guy that I've been trying to get on GoLocal Live for a number of months. He's always zigging in and out of the news, sometimes described as sort of the Hunter S. Thompson of the generation. Others like Tucker Carlson, who went to St. George's down the street, called him the left's new low. Quite a range of description, Luke. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't know if either of those are exactly true, but I'll take both of them.
You've got a new book out, Welcome to Hell World. It is intriguing, raw. It talks about sort of the decay of our world today. Why don't you give an overview, and then I'm going to push back a little on a couple things.
Sure. Well, it's a strange book in a way. It's a mix of reporting and commentary and memoir. From the perspective of somebody who's been a reporter for a long time, and also someone who's constantly attuned to the news, and quite frankly has been driven insane by both of those things. It's also me taking issue with the way that the news has been covered, and trying to do it from a little bit of a different perspective than what we normally get from more corporate media.
Is it that you can make the argument? Listen, times have never been so good for the New York Times. Donald Trump is the top 3 of 5 stories every day. They live and breathe off of Donald Trump. Mike Pence as president would probably cause 200 layoffs of their 1,100 folks in the newsroom. Is that part of it? And I just use the New York Times because they're, maybe the most respected, most mainstream, although conservatives would disagree with me in a nanosecond.
Right. I think that the success of the New York Times, and I don't remember the number, but they've got a record number of subscriptions lately, and Trump certainly has been great for them. I think that their success is actually coming at the cost of the success of local media and all around the country. And we've seen so many different newspaper, dailies and specifically all weeklies where I come from here in Boston have been shuttered all around the country. And now we're seeing it even more with some of the websites that carried on the alt weekly spirit, Deadspin being the most recent one this past week. So while it's great for the New York Times, I think that their success is really emblematic of a problem across the industry. That there's, Washington Post is doing well, Times is doing well, but in the middle has basically just been cut out of the entire media ecosystem.
So let's go through that. Let's talk about media. We report a lot on media. We had a big story this week on sort of behind the scenes on the financials between Gatehouse and Gannett and that merger, a merger that many financial experts are now beginning to raise questions about. $1.78 or $79 billion being funded by Leon Black, good friend of Jeffrey Epstein. And that's on a 5-year note at 11.5% interest, with 2 concerns that have been decreasing in revenue, not profitable for literally years now. That's not a very viable business model to go on a 5-year note at 11.5. The FBI used to arrest members of the Patriarchal crime family for 11.5% interest rates.
Yeah, I think that merger is a disaster. And it's, both those companies have already been doing their best to destroy media across the country. And, I think something that I try to get at in the book and a lot of my writing on the newsletter is that, as you say, Trump has been great for the New York Times, but Trump isn't the problem. Trump is just a symptom of the problem. And, once there's, and this is, a lot of people in the center and a lot of Democrats They seem to think like, well, we just got to get Trump out and everything's going to go back to normal, and I can stop thinking about politics again. And that's not the case. And these type of mergers, they when a daily closes in a city, there's nobody there to cover what's going on at the state house, and there are plenty of corrupt pieces of shit in every state and every city. And being from Rhode Island, you guys certainly have your fair share of them there over the years.
Listen, there's never a day, never a day. This is the great thing about running a news organization in Providence, right? There's never a day without news. There is always something luscious. That's not true in some of our other markets that we're in, but in Providence, Rhode Island, there's always news. And we are going to go into the greatest period of local corruption in all likelihood when we come out of this next recession, because there won't be any local newspapers left, and newspapers produce 80% of all enterprise journalism, even still today.
Right, and yeah, and if nobody's keeping an eye on the chicken coop, you know what the foxes do, right?
So America's gone through this topsy-turvy period. Folks moved towards Obama in the '08 election because they really wanted, believe it or not, hope and change, and they were disenfranchised from the financial markets and saw the corporate greed. And I think you saw, middle of the road Americans move over to vote for an African American Democrat who had only been in the United States Senate for a few years. And then when that didn't work out for them, they went and found the most opposite of that candidate in Donald Trump, the outsider who's going to drain the swamp. So we went from hope and change to drain the swamp. Americans don't seem particularly happy with either of those. Where do, middle class, hardworking Americans go to find a solution?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, I don't really care about middle class Americans. I feel like that's something that politicians always say, and pundits in the media. They're like, what about these hardworking salt of the? I don't give a fuck about those people. I care about the poor people. I care about the people that are getting stepped on, and a lot for those type of people. They rightly see it doesn't matter who I vote for, whether it's Obama or Hillary or Trump or George Bush or whoever, because nobody talks about anything besides the middle class. So I think that's where you see so much enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders, and to a lesser extent to Elizabeth Warren, who are actually starting to say things that might resonate with people who are poor and struggling.
Do they isolate, the argument is right now, certainly Jamie Dimon made the argument yesterday that Elizabeth Warren's narrative is so extreme that she almost ensures Donald Trump's reelection, because that middle of the road will never accept free, right? Isn't that the narrative now being painted about Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, that's what people are saying about it. And the really frustrating thing about that is that's not only coming from Republicans, that's coming from the centrist news media and from establishment types in DC. And the thing that bothers me about that is that when you're a journalist, you're supposed to make it known when you've got a conflict of interest, or you're reporting a story that there's some reason that you might not be completely objective about a story. But we've got these multi-millionaires on cable news every night saying, well, I don't know about some of these things Warren and Bernie are saying, and it should show Anderson Cooper's net worth when he says something like that. It's like, why is being rich considered neutral? I saw a story in the Washington Post this week that it was about some criminal justice and incarceration issues, and they put like an editor's note, this reporter's father had been incarcerated, as if that was like some evidence of bias. It's a lot of.
Well, listen, we try and err on the side of transparency and put as many footnotes as to potentially as many disclosures as we possibly can. The reader ought to be able to see who's behind it. And I agree with you 100%. Listen, if I'm CNN, I'm a corporate entity, right? I'm owned by another corporate entity. And I don't particularly want to see the entire world turned upside down and massive taxes on those who are most wealthy. I mean, those are the decision makers in these organizations. Let me ask you a question, though. Is there an argument that, and kick it to the side as you see fit, that under Trump's financial growth in the economy, that yes, billionaires have made more than ever before, but everybody's working. Everybody's got a job right now. We'll see what it's like in the next recession, and we all know what '08 and '09 were like, when really smart people couldn't find a job anywhere. Really well-trained people couldn't find a job anywhere. Has he had an impact in at least getting people a job?
I guess you'd probably know what the numbers on that are better than I would, but you know, I don't really. Again, I don't really care if people have jobs if they're shitty jobs. You know, I just wrote about a story where the McDonald's CEO just got fired for an inappropriate sexual relationship at work, and he's getting something like a $40 million parachute for getting fired. And meanwhile, the people who work at McDonald's, the one that generate that amount of money through their labor, are making $9 an hour on average.
Right.
And you know, I don't know what you make. I do okay. I'm certain, you know, middle class. The idea of like that you have to work, you know, 8 hours a day at $9 an hour and somehow support a family on that, and then have all these high insurance premiums and everything else. It's insane. It's, you know, it's so. I would be satisfied personally until people just having a job. I'd rather see them have jobs that actually pay a living wage.
Yeah, that math doesn't work. Making $9 an hour and surviving in America today does not work, no matter where you live in the United States.
Right.
Yeah, you know, who do you hope? You know, this book is this interesting conglomerate of your newsletter and other narration. And who do you want to read it, and who do you think in a perfect world would read it?
I don't know. I don't have much hope that I would persuade any Trump people or you know, people on the far right or any rich people to see things from my point of view. I do think I have had some success in pulling, you know, I have a lot of friends who are just sort of baseline Democrats, you know, just Obama, you know, was great, and they just go along with things. But I think that the more these type of stories that, like from Hell World, you know, about people going bankrupt from medical expenses and you know, not being able to you know, pay for being crushed by their student loans and things like that. I have seen people starting to shift, you know, further to the left, and you know, that's been really heartening to me, and that's something that I'm trying to do. Whether or not that actually will make a difference in the real world, probably not. But you know, we've all got to try something, right?
Will the Democrats in this primary process, in your point of view, finally galvanize to a real progressive candidate, or will they get trapped in the Joe Biden world of, well, Joe Biden's better at beating Trump, so we'll be safe and we'll go with Joe Biden, but we may get really just more of the same at the end of the day?
It seems like Biden there was kind of withering on the vine now, isn't he? I think he's in 4th place in Iowa. He's, you know, his fundraising hasn't gone so well. They really wanted to push him up front, so now they've got, you know, Pete and Amy in the, you know, waiting in the wings. They want to push forward as these sensible, centrist types. I don't know. I really hope it doesn't come to that. I mean, you know, surprised anyone who's watching this. I'm a big Bernie guy, but you know, I would also get behind Liz Warren if need be. I really do hope it's one of them, but you know, I'm very cynical. I don't have too much hope that Democrats are deathly afraid of rocking the boat. and they've never seen an opportunity to win that they couldn't fumble. It seems like.
The Boston Magazine interview with you right at the kickoff of the new book talked about maybe American Nazis are not so strongly supportive of your efforts. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, I certainly I write a lot about these sort of terrible people that have always been here for us, but they seem to become a little bit more emboldened in the past couple of years. I don't really know why that is. Maybe somebody's setting a bad example. And I'm really sort of a staunch proponent of coming to steal everybody's guns. And people who love their guns and love Trump, they don't take kindly to that kind of stuff. So I've gotten more than my fair share of threats and harassment and people posting my address online and things like that. It's it's just great fun.
It is now the new norm, I think, in journalism. We've had to take numerous steps on the security front and on other things after controversial articles. Talk a little bit about, you paint a dark picture, but in contrast, if you're a gay or lesbian man or woman, you have more rights than you've ever had before. It's happened quickly in many ways. If you are transgender, you're more able to live a fairer life than you've ever had before. Are we not moving fast enough, or are we just a broken system that really can't get past some of these biases that seems to plague us?
I'm happy that a lot of those things have happened, and you're right. It has gotten some degree better for marginalized people. But I don't think any of us were going to be free until we're all free. And while we have such a struggling underclass of people that frankly, the media and most of our politicians think deserve their struggle because they didn't pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I don't think that there's really going to be too much to be proud of. I mean, I'm happy that you can more fully express your identity, whatever it is, but I don't think that's the sort of a stopping point along the way and what I would like to see.
Andrew Yang talks about what's coming next, which is artificial intelligence. Adaption of technology like that seems to happen very, very quickly in down economies because corporate entities can say, geez, if we can get rid of that entire class of worker, we can become more profitable, and we can replace it with this adaptation of this software that company X is offering to us for just $1 million a month. Are the other candidates, including Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, A, understanding it, and B, talking about it enough, and the realization of technology may eliminate very, very significant groups of workers, in many cases, white collar, middle class, main providers to their families, men and women?
You talking about like automation, getting rid of jobs?
Yeah, automation, artificial intelligence, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. On the one hand, I don't see the point in someone laboring at a task that we've eliminated the need for them to do. But I do think that if we get to that point, we're going to have to make it so all of the profits from those robots or whatever doing the labor don't just shoot up to the owners and the CEOs, and that there's plenty of money to go around. It's just that we have the 1% at the top vacuuming it all out of all of our pockets. So if people didn't have to labor pointlessly all day, that would be great, in my opinion. The problem is that just the rich are going to have to agree to just be a little bit less rich going forward.
Yeah.
And whether or not they agree to that peacefully or not, or something more dramatic happens down the line, we can't keep going like it is, especially with the looming threat of climate change.
You worked for the Globe this summer. It was a short period. You wrote a piece about really calling on people, especially worked in the food industry, to sort of rise up when controversial Trumpian Republicans came in to eat or drink, and the Globe ran it, and then the Globe deleted it. Talk a little bit about that experience. We make those decisions on opinion pieces all the time. We get some very provocative ones. If it goes, sometimes we take the brunt of a lot of criticism, and we don't delete them. If they're up and they're not libelous or something like that, they're going to continue in perpetuity. Were you surprised at the entire experience, and what did you learn from it?
It's interesting. There's a great piece in the New Republic today I just read about the death of the rude media, and as I was alluding to, the death of all weeklies and sites like Deadspin earlier. And one of the lines was something like, you in the normal media, you can say whatever horrible, advocate for whatever horrible policies that you want, as long as you do it politely.
Yeah, right.
And so you can say, you can advocate, I think migrants should be held in camps, but as long as you say it in, within the framing. So my mistake, and the reason why I'm often become at odds with the places that I write for, is I refuse to adhere to that polite, sort of framing of the ideas that I have. And when it comes to that piece in the Globe, Kirsten Nielsen was the architect of these concentration camps we have. And so me, like, whether or not you think it was joking or not, talking about pissing in her food, which is just a funny concept to me, regardless, to be outraged at that, as opposed to the people putting the kids, separating kids from their families, that's just absurd to me, and it shows where your priorities are. You're more worried about decorum and politeness than you are actual people's lives being destroyed.
Yeah, I do want to go to Deadspin. It's we're now seeing, we're in the wild, wild west period, right? It's call it the railroad industry of 1880s. There's railroads going out all over the place, and usually what happens is there's a lot of money that goes into railroads, and then you hit a down economy, and then there's consolidation, and maybe one or two railroads come out of it. You saw it in the dot-com era. A gazillion dot-com companies got more than $100 million in early stage funding, and at the end of the day, we ended up with eBay and Amazon and Google and a few others. Is that what we're headed towards? The strong will survive, to quote Warren Buffett, when the tide goes out, you see who's naked and who's profitable and who's a real business.
Well, like the business geniuses like to talk about the market and Deadspin, but here's the thing: Deadspin was profitable,
right?
And it was doing fine. You got the old Gawker as a whole, it was doing fine until they made what you could argue was a bad decision, and they got submarined by a vindictive billionaire.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is the case of the market, the free hand reacting to the the Deadspin or Gawker, in the old scenario, the product. I think it's the powerful abusing their money in order to help disappear sites that they are rude to them, that don't fall under this rubric of politeness that. Like, the New York Times, they have published the trashiest shit all the time with some of the dumbest pundits alive. What's his name? Brett Stevens and Bari Weiss and, dunces like that. But they say their shit politely. And so that's where the money supports that. Meanwhile, some of the writers at Deadspin were some of the funniest and the most irreverent thinkers we have. The people who bought it, some investment firm guys, they had no idea what they're doing, and they just destroyed it because they didn't get it.
Right, state of sports, right? Wasn't that the mantra that they told the Deadspin folks?
Yeah.
Where will we be in 36 months? Let's go a year after the election. What will the country look like? What will media look like? What will our politics look like?
Well, I think about a year into the election, we'll all be living under fully automated space communism. Thanks to President Bernie Sanders. My college debt will be eliminated. Unfortunately, I still have some. No, I think I'm actually very worried. I don't think Trump is going to win again, but I don't think he's going to go off quietly into the good night, so to speak. So. I think about a year from now, we're going to be into the lawsuit about Trump refusing the results of the election. We're all going to be even worse off than we are today.
Oh,
That's
well,
why they call it Hell World.
yeah, that's right. Listen, congratulations on the book. Congratulations on what you've built. As an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. These things are not easy to build. To get thousands of people to come to a website on a daily basis is not an easy thing to do. It takes tremendous innovation, tremendous energy, and some smarts. So kudos to you. Tomorrow's article will have where you can buy the book and links to your, be able to sign up to your newsletter. Anything else we should, that viewers should know?
No, if you like some of the stuff I've said here, you can sign up for loop.substack.com, and on tomorrow, Friday night, I'm doing a book reading at Great Scott in Alston, and I'll be me and Chris Ferrone, who runs Dig Boston, one of the last all weeklies standing. So if you're on, come check that out. Please don't assassinate me.
Yeah, Luke O'Neill, thank you so much. So glad you finally made it on. Hopefully, we can make this a semi-regular thing every quarter or something like that. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow at noontime. Kate Nagel will be back in the command center. Thanks, everybody.